Good morning, everyone. A little Wednesday morning news update for us here. Some big news regarding Georgia's biggest quarterback, biggest commitment, biggest player in the 2023, 2024 rather recruiting cycle. Jeff Santel, Dylan Raiola is going to be moving from Phoenix, Arizona to right down the road from Athens, Georgia, to a high school that has produced quite a lot of talent in recent years, has had players in recent years, a number of big time players in this 2024 recruiting class. Dylan Raiola will be playing his senior season at Buford High School in a move that has been rumored for a while. So, Jeff, without further ado, what can you tell us about this and where Dylan is ultimately going and why he's ultimately going to Buford High School?
Morning, Connor. Good morning, DawgNation. Nothing like a big bowl of breaking news for breakfast, right? A breakfast ball of breaking news. Let me see. I think this started trickling around the state of Georgia uh, mid-May, maybe. I know right around the Cam Newton tournament, which is held in Atlanta every year. Every coach that was there, every player that was there was talking about it. And I guess we got to have a morning chuckle about this, Connor, because how can Georgia recruit players better out of Buford High School? Well, they can just have their top-rated player in the class transfer to Buford High School, um, and try to sign his name on the dotted line out of Buford. I think for me, there's like three or four big takeaways for this story. Number one, I guess we got to start with what benefits the Raiolas the most. Dylan told me out at Elite 11 out in California last week that he's probably made about 60 or 70 calls, texts, FaceTimes for Georgia, trying to put together the best possible class. But it was going to be a little bumpy because he was going to be faced with the prospect of having to fly 4 or 5 hours, a lot of red eye flights, a lot of late flights from games. Get this, the games would be obviously on Friday nights in Arizona, and then he would have to fly to Georgia to catch Georgia home games. That was going to be a very daunting travel schedule. Well, now that's made much easier because he's living in Gwinnett County. He's living in Buford. The family's making a bona fide move. If he wants to show up when J.J. Smith takes an unofficial visit, if he wants to go watch practice, if he wants to go show up for the slip and slide in July, if he wants to be there in that front row in Athens every week, every home game of the season, he can certainly do that now. The other thing that makes sense is this is a move for the future. It's not just for the games this fall. The Raiola family, they're blessed with the means to have an NFL career, 14 years in the NFL, so they can make this move. They can make the bona fide move. That's a key term for all the Georgia High School Association fans out there, where they can make a bona fide move inside the Buford district and they can be eligible to play right away. But this is a great vantage point for them to follow Dylan Raiola's career for the next 3 or 4 seasons once he enrolls at Georgia in January. The other thing that you got to make sense here is for the Raiola family, it's not just a move for, hey, get closer to Georgia, hey, play a higher level of football than you would be playing in Arizona. There's no doubt. I think Buford has played, at least in the semifinal round, in 18 of the last 20 seasons in Georgia high school football. That's the biggest big boy football Georgia has. But also, it just gives them a fact to he's got a younger brother named Dayton Raiola. Dayton is an accomplished, emerging 2026 quarterback, and now he's going to grow. He's going to develop in the Buford system, playing high school football in the Buford system. Now, there's some other neat little wrinkles to this story. I think it is believed that he was also facing he was going to have to sit out a number of games in Arizona because of his move from Chandler High School to Pinnacle High School. This winter. I think he moved right in February. So everybody's going to look and they're going to go, oh my gosh, this is a player moving around. This is a player moving so many high schools in so many years. Normally that's a red flag. I'll grant folks that. But this move right here is going to benefit the Raiola family. It's going to benefit Dylan being able to recruit for Georgia. And I'm sure a lot of DawgNation fans will love that. And it's also going to benefit him in terms of playing in a higher level, higher classification of football. So when he's at Georgia in spring practice and he's in those workouts, he's more accustomed to what a high-level SEC football player will look like, because that's what goodness knows. I think I calculated this up, Connor, when I was at the Elite 11. I think there are 10 Buford players now that have a Georgia offer. So a lot of big things here, a lot of big bowl of breaking news this morning to talk about. And also, man, it sets up a dream matchup. You know, us reporter types, we like to forecast. We like to think, what could this eventually mean? Connor, can you imagine if Juju Lewis and Carrollton High School face Dylan Raiola in Buford High School on a playoff game somewhere in the state of Georgia in November?
That's it. Look, Georgia. There are a lot of great Georgia high school football games that would happen that are on the table. There's a ton of talented players, a ton of talented teams in this state. If Carrollton plays Buford, because Juju Lewis, number one overall player in the 2026 class, some believe the number one overall high school player in the country in terms of where he is in terms of his development and how he can get better. They got to find a bigger stadium to play that game. I'm not saying play it at Mercedes-Benz, but you're going to have a lot of interested people at those games. And one thing, this is not necessarily an unprecedented move, specifically within the confines of moving to Buford for their senior year. Last year we saw Justice Haynes transfer from Blessed Trinity to Buford. Obviously not nowhere near as big a move, but this is something that we've seen players do before. And with Buford in particular, Jeff, Dylan Raiola, as you wrote in your story, is not the only five-star prospect at Buford High School this year. In fact, anyone who watches your show would note that the top targets for Georgia right now, KJ Bolden, Edric Houston, those are also five stars that attend Buford. So I guess more specifically, to get to the point, how does Raiola going there help Georgia potentially land either one of those players?
Yeah, I think one of the things we'll talk about on Hedges today is what's our favorite term, Connor? That ship has sailed. Well, I think the ship might be sailing, might be leaving port, kind of like Love Boat style with Edric Houston. Now, the man that remains in play, he's the number one target for the Georgia 2024 class, according to DawgNation's weekly Before the Hedges show. That's KJ Bolden. And get this, Connor, he's going to be able to throw to KJ Bolden because they're going to spread that ball around at Buford with a quarterback quite like Dylan Raiola. Now, I think it's interesting here about Raiola because is Buford's system really set up to be that stretch, deep shot, vertical kind of play action team that would fit his skill set? I don't know about that. I'm sure the smart coaches at Buford High School are going to tailor an offense and some calls around what Raiola does well, because mostly you've seen him being a check down team that likes to run the football a lot, and they've got a running back with the Georgia offer in Junior Baker there as well. I can't believe it. That's 10 guys, I think, with a Georgia offer on one single high school team. And it's also Buford, which is kind of, in and itself a monumental hurdle in the way of season crushing everywhere on the schedules for Georgia high school football teams. But he's going to get to throw KJ. He's going to get to be in his ear. He's going to be able to remind Edric Houston, is like, hey, man, see that 6 points I just put up on the board right there? You could be playing defense with us and everybody else like that. So I think it's one of those moves. I know everybody's going to sit there and go, oh my gosh, she's got another high school team. This is one that I think if you heard my preamble at the beginning of our program, helps Georgia recruit. It gets Raiola adjusted to the speed of Georgia high school football, practices with so many SEC players because the Buford Wolves are awash with SEC and Power 5 prospects. So he's going to get used to that speed of the game. He's going to get used to facing tighter windows in Gwinnett County and throwing the ball against the national schedule. Like Buford, very hard for Buford to get 10 regular season games in Georgia this year. I think they're going to Maryland to face the team. I think they've got another out-of-region game as well. And it's going to really, I think, supersize his development to have him adjust to the learning curve at Georgia a lot better. If you're a Georgia high school fan, you're going to love it. If you're a Georgia Bulldog fan, you're going to love it because you can go see Raiola on Friday night, and then you can drive 50 minutes to Athens and go see his future team and the Dogs on Saturday afternoon and even Saturday night this year. I think the number 15 is going to be big, which you wrote about earlier this week. That's Carson Beck's number, and that's the number that Dylan Raiola wants to wear in college as well.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with Raiola, think of this move sort of like, even another player in this 2024 class, Nitro Tuggle. Think of him transferring to IMG Academy. That's something we see a lot more frequently, and that has sort of become an accepted norm here. In my opinion, this follows along those same lines of he's going to a program that was quite frankly better than what he was playing with in Arizona. It does sort of, as you point out, get him in a place where he is practicing against SEC players all the time. Not just, the 10 guys that have offers to Georgia, but even, a guy in the 2025 class, Jaden Paloit. Sorry if I mispronounced his name there. This is a Buford program that has long been one of the best in the state of Georgia. Since 2000, they've won 11 state championships. And look at this, no days off for our own Brandon Adams joining in. On his way to a cruise, he got the Tommy Bahama shirt on, or Hawaiian shirt. BA, Mr. Georgia High School football himself. What is your reaction to Dylan Raiola transferring to Buford High School?
Can you guys hear me okay, first of
Yeah.
all?
Yep, loud and
So
clear.
I don't want to hijack the broadcast. You guys are doing a great job, but obviously somebody who loves high school football in Georgia, this is a very big deal. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited about it for Dylan. I think that he'll benefit from the kind of competition you get in the 7A classification in Georgia. I'll caution folks. I mean, Buford, you can't be more talented than Buford was a year ago, and you can't be a much better high school player than Justice Haynes was a year ago. And Buford didn't win the state championship last year. So for folks who think that Dylan, as good as I believe he is, that he's going to come in and dominate Georgia high school football, I mean, I think he'll do well because I think he's a great player, but I think this is also a good state for Georgia high school football. So I think you'll see a lot of great competition here. You may have touched on this already, but from a high school football centric standpoint, I think one of the things that's interesting is this is not really what Buford's offense has been, right? This is kind of a run first team. This is a very physical team. This is kind of an old school football team. So Dylan on Buford, for those who care about high school football, is a little bit of a contrast in styles, which I think is obviously very interesting. And something else I'm sure you guys have mentioned, the idea that our state championship this year could very easily be Julian Lewis at Carrollton versus Dylan Raiola from Buford. I just think this, for a talent-rich state like Georgia, I don't know that you've ever had quite a season that'll be anticipated like this. And for those of us who really love watching these guys on their way to UGA, to get a chance to watch him play a few miles down the road, I think this is legitimately a very, very exciting thing.
Yeah, I think from the Georgia perspective here, Jeff, you were touching on this as well. This is something where it's going to be so much easier for him now to be at games on Saturday. And we know from Kirby Smart, those Saturday home games are a massive, massive recruiting tool. Maybe not so much for the official visit anymore because those have sort of gone by the wayside with the way the recruiting calendar has been updated. But, just getting prospects in, having him be around the program and the facility, I think that's going to make his transition to college all the easier. And look, I mean, this is a guy who believes he has the talent to come in and play right away, come in and contribute right away. I think going to Buford for his senior year is going to help that. As someone here, though, can I be a hater for 30 seconds?
Please.
As someone who is a similar, maybe not to the level you two are, but a Georgia high school football follower, a Georgia high school football fan, did he have to go to Buford? I mean, Buford has won so much over the years. They already have, on an annual basis, it's between them and Grayson for being the most talented team. This is, in my opinion, this is like going to play NCAA 14 or Madden, whatever, and playing on rookie mode or playing on freshman mode. I'm not saying he had to go to Centennial and try and win, but I mean, there are other programs out there that it would have been a little bit more difficult for Dylan Raiola to go out there and try and compete. So I do understand why he would do this. It makes a lot of sense from his perspective as someone who enjoys and follows the sport, specifically within Georgia high school football, which in my opinion is the best in the country. Did he have to go to Buford? Did he have to go to the team that has 11 state titles since 2000?
Well, I think that's a fair question, Jeff. I mean, why do you think he chose Buford? Because I have to say, like deep down, I don't know that I'll necessarily admit which school I thought he was going to go to, but I sort of thought that while the conventional wisdom had him going to Buford, I sort of sneakily thought he might go somewhere else. Like, why do you think he chose Buford, Jeff?
Good questions. Connor, is it kind of like Caleb Williams transferring to Georgia, something like that for his junior season? It's kind of like that.
Exactly.
Here's the thing. I think you got to remember this is a move the family wants to make, not just for Dylan's career for the next 6 months and the next 3 years at Georgia, but also Dayton Raiola. That's where they're going to live. That's Dylan's younger brother, 2026 quarterback, pretty emerging prospect in his own right. He's going to have a future. Big arm, just needs to grow and fill out a little bit more. It's also a great place to live. Buford, you could live on the lake maybe, perhaps right there. And if you spent 14 years of collected paychecks in the NFL, I'm sure you can afford some lakefront property somewhere around Buford Dam or somewhere within the bona fide city confines of everything. I think the thing, you got to look at with this move, and Brandon, you'd like this. A lot of people are jumping in the comment section. They're saying, where's the line for BA to start petitioning to call every Buford high school game this year?
Oh, trust me, there's already back channel conversations taking place on that. I can promise you that.
It's going to be. I'm sure that big Peachtree TV truck's going to like to pull up to Buford as many times as it can. I like this move. There's a lot of reasons why Georgia fans will get excited about it. I think the main thing, Brandon, besides the location and the locale and whatever's going to be happening on Zillow or your favorite realty sponsorship or whatever. You've got a situation here where he's going to play with, let's just call it the best, probably most successful high school program in Georgia. I can't recall the last time I've ever seen a high school team with 10 offers from Georgia, much less 10 offers from the back-to-back national champions. He's going to have a running back that has a Georgia offer. He's got linebackers. He's got receivers. He's got defensive linemen with Georgia offers, cornerbacks with Georgia offers. His slot receiver, Brandon Jordan Allen, a really good-looking, fast-rising slot receiver, picked up an offer from Georgia recently. He's going to be throwing to at least 2 players this fall that have Georgia offers. One of those will be KJ Bolden. He told me out in LA at the Elite 11 that he seriously still desperately wants to add KJ Bolden to the class. Those two have a strong connection and a kinship, and I think all of this stuff's going to help pave the road for that to happen.
Well, I'm going to let you guys go and let you get back to it because you guys are doing a great job. But I just wanted to chime in for a second and say I'm really excited about this. Very happy for Dylan. I think this is fun for those who care about high school football, for those who care about UGA recruiting, because as Connor pointed out, proximity to Athens here just allows him to get such a leg up on the start of his college career. And, obviously in some form or fashion, what's going to happen at quarterback for Georgia in 2024 is going to be fascinating. I thought Connor's piece on that this week at DawgNation.com was really pretty poignant in terms of we have a lot of mysteries to unravel about this quarterback spot, and the fact that Dylan's going to spend several months around the Athens area, not too far down the road prior to arriving. I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to what happens, moving forward here at the quarterback spot. But Dylan being this close, I certainly think he makes it really, really interesting. So I'm going to let y'all have it, and I'll look forward to reading a whole bunch from you. And then I'll see you back here in a few days, when I'm back in town.
Enjoy your vacation, BA. Please, I am begging you.
Brandon,
I certainly will.
You're going to be singing the
All
beautiful
right,
song around Lido Deck this week, man, something like that.
It's certainly a good day for our state, so it'll be fun to talk about. So good to check in with you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, BA. So one question that I do have, and Jeff, you were out in Los Angeles last week at the Elite 11 around not just Dylan Raiola, but we've talked so much about how I think this move helps him and helps him potentially kickstart his Georgia career. Does this do anything for Ryan Puglisi? Obviously, I think he's continuing to stay committed and has made it very clear he wants to come to Georgia. You got a chance to talk to him last week. What is his mindset? What were your sort of impressions of Puglisi and seeing him up close and throw at the Elite 11?
First of all, he can bring it. He can definitely bring it. One of those things where a lot of times the ball hit the RPMs on his ball were even had a little bit more steam on him than Raiola's ball. Raiola just makes it look so simple and easy with his mechanics. It looks like easy gas, where I think I wrote that when Puglisi, got to put the word glee in the pronunciation there, Puglisi, when he throws the ball, it looks like he's choosing violence or he's trying to knock out Ivan Drago in Rocky IV. Definitely. I don't think a lot of people know how great a baseball prospect that Ryan Puglisi was. I mean, he was 93 off the mound. He played third base, and he got invited to some of those Elite 11 similarity parallel competitions for baseball. It's called the area code baseball tournaments. He was invited to participate in a lot of those, but I guess I'll use the same comparison I did earlier, kind of in jest. Connor, I think if Caleb Williams was coming to Georgia, I think Ryan Puglisi would still want to follow. He just understands Georgia. He looks at the example set by both Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. Just wait on it. Just grow. Just develop. Good things are going to happen for you. Good things are going to happen for you when you're going against Georgia's defense every day in practice. I know Puglisi feels like that's going to do him a lot more of a solid than maybe being a starter or maybe being a second-team guy, a backup guy at a lesser program than the Dogs. And you look at Puglisi, he really believes that sort of good things happen to those who wait. And he knows he's not a finished product yet, and he knows he's going to get better each and every year at Georgia. I don't think the young man can be any more committed to Georgia than he is. I saw his father, Daniel Puglisi, wearing more hats than I think BA has in his closet in terms of Georgia hats. He had a stylish little white number one day, and then he had a red classic the next day. He really loves the Dogs. He's loved the Dogs. His family told me that the day he got offered, which was probably, I think, his second ever visit to Georgia, he wanted to commit on the spot. He wanted to commit to Monken, but his family, his mom, his brothers weren't with him, so that's why he waited until everybody came back in October. This was kind of a done deal for a while, and it hasn't wavered one iota with the Raiola commitment or the Raiola recruitment, or I don't expect it to waver at all whatsoever with him with Raiola now being in Buford, attending a Gwinnett County school. That dude's as locked in as we can ever write and articulate somebody being locked in.
Yeah, and I think both those two circumstances, Puglisi and his unwaveringness to Georgia, even surrounding some of the competition that he'll have with Dylan Raiola going forward, and then Raiola, I think making this move to better himself, I think reflects the philosophy that Kirby Smart wants his players, the sort of mental ID that these players need to have to come compete at Georgia. They're so fond of saying Georgia is not for everyone. Well, Raiola moving from Phoenix, from Arizona to play his senior season at Georgia, where there's going to be, not quite the level at UGA pressure, but there's going to be pressure on him to win a state championship this year. As BA pointed out, for so long we wanted to see Buford compete at the highest levels in Georgia high school football. They did that last year, and they lost to a really talented Walton team in the quarterfinals. And there are a lot of, obviously we touched on Carrollton with Juju Lewis. Mill Creek, the defending state champions, has a lot of really talented players. There are a lot of really good teams in this state. Grayson is an annual team, an annual contender there in the Gwinnett area. So there's going to be pressure on Dylan to come in here and not just play well. And you've already mentioned sort of the fit and how his game maybe isn't traditionally tailored to what Buford likes from its quarterbacks. I think both of these moves sort of reflect what Kirby looks for from his players, what he wants out of them from a mental standpoint. And so the fact that they're continuing to try and better themselves, whether it be, right now in Raiola's case or in Puglisi's case, knowing that, there are plenty of quarterbacks out there that would not want to compete with a guy of Raiola's talent. And that Puglisi is so unwaveringly been like, bring it on, I'm ready for it, I think shows that Georgia knows what it has in its two quarterbacks. And that's a big reason why I think they prioritize both of them. Obviously, they have incredible natural talent, but there is something to be said here, in my opinion, about the mental acumen of both of these guys and what they bring to the table from that standpoint.
Yeah, Connor, that's a good point. One of the things that the I guess I would say call them the coaches or the camp counselors or the instructors at the Elite 11 said last week is they said, make sure you write about Puglisi, man. Make sure you tell all those folks back in Georgia to not sleep on Ryan Puglisi, because there's some juice there. There's some real fire. There's some real strong intangibles there. I think talent and makeup, I think, are the two words that I would use to describe Ryan Puglisi to a T, because I think he's got all that, and he's got all that in spades. The one thing you'll notice is, Puglisi, the way he kind of, let's face it, at the Elite 11, and this was kind of like one of the things Kirby likes to do. He likes to force pressure. He likes to put you in the melting pot and the pressure cooker and see what happens. I think we've said on these programs and streams a lot that the freshman year for a quarterback at Georgia is like psychological warfare. It wants to break you. Kirby wants to break down that young golden arm, that 5-star, that All-American, and see what they're really made of. Hey, get you some of that scout team all the time with all those future first-round draft picks on there. And the thing with Puglisi, and you just watch him, he's ready for it. He wants it. He seeks it. He craves it. I think the thing that the Elite 11 did, and this was all scripted, the organizers there told me is like, if we could get Dylan Raiola and Ryan Puglisi going back-to-back to the waterline, we were going to do that this week. They wanted them to follow each other in every throw and every pro day. They put them in the same groups together because they wanted to know, hey, man, that's what Athens is going to be like. You're going to be throwing next to that dude. You're going to be trying to rip the ball better than he did. And that's another mental game. That's another thing that they try to put on your plate. The Elite 11 is so much about mentally preparing players, because everybody can stink and throw the ball. There's no doubt about that. But mentally preparing the player to give them an edge. And there's some sequences last week that I'd like to point out. Like, there was an accuracy challenge where Dylan Raiola didn't look really good at all. I think he only hit 1 out of 8 targets. And I think he came back and he basically had a mic drop performance with the best 7-on-7 session of anybody at the Elite 11. But before that, he was like, oh, man, what's going on here, man? And the young man, Ryan Puglisi, came right after that, and he's like, all right, man, now it's my turn. And Puglisi was money. I think he hit 4 out of 5 out of the 8 stations, and he looked pretty good doing it. So that's something, whereas if Dylan doesn't have a great rep and Ryan's like, all right, here's my shot, let me see what I can do. And he has already shown at the high school level on a pretty big stage at Elite 11 where he can sit there and move the team, or at least put the ball where it needs to be when everybody's watching him, and Georgia needs him to come up with some big plays.
Yeah, so resetting things here, obviously the big news of the morning, Dylan Raiola, 5-star quarterback, #1 overall player in the 2024 recruiting class, a Georgia commit, will now be playing his senior season at a Georgia high school and one of the best in the state, Buford High School. It's about 45, 50 minutes away from Athens, Georgia. This is a program that, as Jeff has pointed out, 10 offers to players on that Buford High School team. The number one target for Georgia right now in the 2024 recruiting class, five-star safety KJ Bolden, will now be a teammate of Raiola's there. And so recapping, resetting, how ultimately does Raiola moving closer to Athens, playing his senior season at Georgia, or in Georgia at Buford at the highest classification in the state, how ultimately does that help Georgia?
Helps Georgia recruit better because you got your number one Pied Piper in the class. It helps Dylan Raiola play better because he's going to be exposed to Gwinnett County football and be on a roster that I think is flush with Power 5 prospects, including they probably got another offer this week to a 2026 guy or something like that. Double-digit guys on the same team with a Georgia offer from the back-to-back national champions. I think it helps the Raiola family follow Georgia football. He'll be at every home game this fall. It'll help the development of his younger brother, Dayton Raiola, an emerging 2026 quarterback in his own right. So they can watch Dayton at Buford on Friday night and then watch Dylan at Georgia on Saturdays, wherever they're at in the SEC. Dylan is a guy, loves the Dogs. I think he concluded every interview, every session of media he did last week out there at Elite 11 in Los Angeles with Go Dogs. And he's really hopeful and really optimistic about his future. And then also, simply put, Georgia high school football here, Arizona high school football there, speed of the game. When Dylan gets to Georgia, he's going to have a lot more live game reps, a lot more accustomed to the speed of the game in Georgia and in the SEC compared to out in Arizona.
Yeah, and sort of wrapping things up here, look, this is going to be another interesting test for Dylan. I think, and I've said earlier, and I think you agree with me, and you've seen far more than I have. Georgia high school football, in my opinion, is the best high school football in the entire country. There's just something different. These boys have them dogs in them, to use a popular vernacular phrase there. And so there's going to be a good amount of pressure to come in and for Dylan to play well. And I think it's going to simulate some of what he's going to face in his freshman season at Georgia, regardless of whether Carson Beck or there is a returning starting quarterback at Georgia. I think, look, this is a Buford team that is as talented as any in the state. But as we saw a season ago, they're just as capable of losing on any given Friday night. And so I think this is going to be an adjustment for Dylan. It is going to obviously be a new system for him. There's going to be, a period of him getting familiar with his new teammates and all that. And while he is as talented as any player in the country, according to just about every recruiting service, he is the most talented player in the country. I do not expect it to necessarily come in and he's going to throw for 500 yards in every game. There is going to be a learning curve with the schedule, with the newness of this situation. And I'm going to be really interested in seeing how Raiola responds to this. Obviously, the tangible benefits, as you point out, his family being able to be closer to him, the development of his younger brother as a quarterback prospect, the fact that Georgia's going to be able to have him, not just at every game, but if he wants to shoot up there for a practice or something along the lines of that to watch and partake and get a better understanding of the Georgia culture. I think that's a big benefit there. And so, long term, I do think that this is a win for Dylan Raiola, even if I don't personally love that he picked Buford. I do think that this is, if we're saying, this is the best spot for his development, it's hard to argue against Buford and with what they have and with what he's going to step into, because I do think on some level they are the Georgia of Georgia high school football programs right now. And so, if you want to go be the best, go play with the best, go practice with the best, which is a big reason why I think he committed to Georgia. I think that's something you want to see there from him. And so he's sort of following in that footsteps that he did with his commitment. Jeff, before we let you go, final thoughts on this move, what it means, what's your number one takeaway? I don't want to spoil everything from Before the Hedges Night, which make sure you check out around 8 o'clock on the DawgNation social channels. But your final thoughts on Dylan Raiola making the big move to Buford High School.
It's funny. Let me give a shout out to Colby in the comments. I like him. You made me laugh this morning. He said the Buford backup quarterback just transferred to Florida. Good one, man. Good one, my man. Tally-ho, good sir. I guess I like this. I think there's going to be a spot, maybe let's call it third round of the Georgia high school playoffs. They're down to 6A now. It's no longer 7A, I believe. But, you're going to see Raiola leading a drive. And everybody that wants to know, does the product on the field match those rankings? Well, you're going to find out. what's that thing going around social media? Transfer around and find out. Let me clean it up a little bit. You're going to find out, because if he can do this against the daunting teams on the schedule, if he can beat a Parkview and Mike Matthews in the playoffs, if he can meet up with a Colquitt County, if he can meet up with a Walton, and there's probably better. I'm sure I want to offend a lot of high school offensive coordinators here. There are probably better offenses for him to go to in the state that maybe run more what Georgia does, or go 4 wide and sling it all over the place than the system that Georgia had. But for you to be in the thick of it, all eyes on you. I mean, let's face it, I'm sure DawgNation will have a camera and a reporter at every Buford high school game this year. If it's not me, myself, or Brandon in the booth trying to call it. So that all eyes on me kind of Tupac mentality, that everybody's going to be watching you.
Yeah. Bo Burnham song for kids these generation.
Yeah. But you're going to have Bo Burnham. Great. But you're going to have to sit there and say, all right, big spot, good team on the other side, move the ball. Let's see what you can do. And people are going to notice whether Dylan Raiola rises his game, or they're going to notice where, a little bit too much for him right there. I think really from a lot of perspectives, it supersizes the chance for him to be competitive and be the best version of himself when he gets to Georgia. And that's by spending his season with the Buford Wolves.
Yep, so that'll do it for us here today. Obviously, Brandon Adams on his way to vacation. He will have a show at 10 a.m., DawgNation Daily. It's not daily if you don't do it every day. And then Jeff Sentell is going to have a whole lot more, not just on this, but he was out at the Elite 11 this past week, getting a chance to watch Raiola up close and personal, watch Puglisi up close and personal. I'm sure he's going to have a ton of great stuff on that, so make sure to tune into that. For Jeff Sentell, my name is Connor Riley. This has been a DawgNation production, breaking down the big move of Dylan Raiola making the cross-country trek from Arizona to play his senior season at Buford High School.